Time now to take a look at what's grabbing headlines around the world. Papers are reacting to those Syrian peace talks in Astana that we've been telling you about all morning. Discussions ended with an agreement among the three sponsors of the talks. Flo, what more can you tell us?
Well, Russia, Turkey and Iran managed to strike this informal deal to protect the fragile ceasefire that we're seeing in Syria. The regime there has hailed it a success, but you can see here, L'Orient Le Jour, the Lebanese paper, is quite disappointed. You can see on their front page they're talking about this deal in Astana that actually doesn't see any tangible progress. This partial success has a hard time hiding the total absence of any progress on the political front, according to L'Orient Le Jour.
Well, this summit comes as Syria nears the 6th anniversary of the beginning of the civil war. Meanwhile, in Egypt, papers are marking the 6-year anniversary of the beginning of the revolution.
That's right. That was on January 25th. So papers are focusing on this. But what's interesting is it's not really front page news. You really have to go back inside newspapers to take a look. Some papers are hardly talking about it. This is Rai Al-Youm, one of the rare Egyptian papers that's been very outspoken, somewhat critical of authorities. And they're kind of seeing what's changed in the past 6 years. It's been very eventful, according to Rai Al-Youm. So eventful, in fact, that the revolution has developed in a very quick way. In fact, it's reached a stage of precocious maturity, according to Rai Al-Youm. What's changed most? Security, according to this paper. Security forces really learned the mistakes from the past, and there has been, however, a big step backwards in terms of freedom. Freedom of expression has been crushed, and the paper also reminds readers that countless people have been thrown into jail.
Right, well, papers outside of Egypt are also looking back at what's changed over the past 6 years.
That's right, and you really do have to look outside of Egypt to find very critical articles of Egyptian authorities. You can see here Libération saying 6 years later, the protests in Tahrir Square seem very distant. In the name of security, President al-Sisi continues to restrict freedom. So you can see their headline here, 6 years after the revolution, well, it's been confiscated.
All right, well, let's stay in the region, Flo. Yesterday, Israel announced plans to build an additional 2,500 units inside the West Bank settlements.
That's right. That's very much front page news in Israel. Let's take a look at Yediot Aharonot. You can see this photo here. Very smiley Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman, who approved this decision jointly. It's also on the front page of the Jerusalem Post today. And the Jerusalem Post can't help but notice the timing of this announcement 4 days after the inauguration of Donald Trump.
Well, many papers are saying that Trump's inauguration has emboldened Israeli authorities to shake off the constraints that were imposed by Obama's administration.
Several very interesting analysis pieces today that focus just on that. Let's start with the Jerusalem Post once again. In their editorial, you can see they're talking about how it seems like the settlement stars have really aligned for Benjamin Netanyahu. The situation in Washington makes it easier for him. He no longer fears a backlash of the so-called morality police that was the Obama administration. Very similar analysis in Haaretz today that says that with Trump in power, the hunting season is opened. But you can see Haaretz has a very different take on this and says this is actually a huge problem for Israel. The state of Israel has lost its right to lament. Its Wailing Wall has been demolished. It no longer has anyone to blame, essentially. And Haaretz says the problem is this Wailing Wall really protected Israel from itself. And this analysis piece says the whip has been folded and put away, and now everything is allowed, including political suicide.
All right, well, let's stay with walls. White House officials are saying that President Trump is going to talk about the construction of a Mexican border wall later today.
That's right. Now, Trump actually tweeted this yesterday, and not surprisingly, the Mexican papers are following this this situation quite closely. You can see El Universal actually published the tweet by Donald Trump. A big day planned on national security tomorrow, amongst other things. We will build the wall. So you can get all the details in the Mexican press. Another thing that the president is excited about is his plan to sign a temporary immigration ban targeting Muslims and blocking most refugees. You can read all about that in the American press. I pulled out this article from Slate that says, if you thought or perhaps hoped that Donald Trump's nastiness on the campaign trail would be softened, well, it's here to stay.
Well, meanwhile, in China, authorities are hitting back after Trump's team vowed to prevent China from taking over territory in international waters. That's, of course, in the South China Sea.
That's right. And all this in the name of protecting U.S. interests. Now, the Chinese media is taking this very seriously. You can see here on the front page of the Global Times, this U.S. sea stance spurs hostility. And it's in its editorial, the China Daily has a warning. If there is to be war in the South China Sea, it will be because of action by the U.S. military. You can see the title here, Trump and co. have nothing to defend in the South China Sea. But let's end with a little bit of good news, shall we? Let's turn to Variety, that's taking a look at the Oscars. And you can see after some disappointing years, well, diversity has really improved. You might remember last year there was a hashtag Oscars so white that went around because there was a serious lack of diversity. Well, this year there's a record-tying number. 7 minority actors were recognized, including a record-setting 6 black actors. You can see there Denzel Washington nominated for Best Actor in his role in the film Fences, along with his co-star there, Viola Davis, nominated for Supporting Actress, Best Supporting Actress. So you can see a little bit of improvement after a controversy.
So some headway made clearly since 2016 then. All right, Flo, thanks very much for the international papers for us.